in fact, it is a meeting on European Sub-Saharan African partnerships for achieving sustainable development and access. But let me just first say that for me, it's a really huge privilege that I have opportunity to be at this symposium. I found the discussions very inspirational, in particular the talk of the Chancellor this morning, and it sort of amplifies my belief or faith that this year is quite symbolic, or it's more than symbolic. I think it's a year of great opportunities to actually initiate actions toward the transformation, toward decarbonization. For that, I think we need vigorous action agenda, or agendas, one should say plural, in different countries, different businesses, in private sector. And I think this is the basis for the new partnerships. And for me, partnership is the way to go forward. Now, we shouldn't forget we are just 40 days away from Rio Plus 20. I mean, that's another very important thing. There's not that much time left. But I think on the positive side, the good news is that the awareness is really increasing. I think awareness both about the need to decarbonize and the need to launch a much stronger transformational change in the coming decade. So Rio, in some ways, it's a beginning we should have had 20 years ago, but maybe it's a bit late, but it's never too late to start. Now, let me say that the German Advisory Council on Global Change has published a report on transformational change. I'm sure many of you have seen it in German. There is also an English translation that can be downloaded. And I think one of the big conclusions of that report, at least in my perspective, is that transformation is actually going on, but it needs to be accelerated. It has to become vigorous, and it has to become pervasive over the next decade. So in some sense, we talked this morning about the resources being limited. I think time is also being limited. The time that we have to achieve this transformation is limited. And this kind of thinking, I think, one finds in many more studies. For example, I've been involved in the global energy assessment that's been conducted by about 500 experts around the world and will be also launched at Rio. And the global energy assessment amplifies this conclusion. So I think it is only appropriate, and Lena mentioned it this morning, the UN General Assembly has declared this year the year of sustainable energy for all. And I think this is a really important initiative. Ban Ki-moon himself, the Secretary General, has put lots of his political energy behind that and has called for 3, what I would call aspirational and visionary goals that I think can catalyze this process and enhance other partnerships that we have around the world. And maybe this is a new entry point, actually, in addition to trying to do a global deal, actually to try to catalyze this bottom-up. So let me just tell you what the 3 goals are. Number 1, it's universal access to all, to sustainable energy by 2030. This is important because about 3 billion people still cook with solid fuels. That's a huge barrier to development, and about 1.5 billion people do not even have access to electricity. The second goal is to double the rate of efficiency improvement, translated into action. That would mean something like 40% reduction in energy needs by 2030 with the same services. And the third goal, I think important in this context, is double the share of renewables worldwide to 30%. And that, I think, symbolizes the need for decarbonize. Now, I think in the German Advisory Council, in its transformational report, as well as the Global Energy Assessment, have identified a number of development pathways that fulfill these 3 goals of Ban Ki-moon. They to fulfill these 3 goals and bring many, many benefits. Important, energy security would be a huge benefit. Then human health through avoidance of air pollution, in particular indoor air pollution. And I would say what one needs to stress in context of decarbonization is that in the long term, this is consistent with achieving climate stabilization at less than 2 degrees. But of course, additional actions will be required. This is just the beginning, but a very important beginning. Now, where is the challenge? And we have heard that in the previous panels and also from the Chancellor. The challenge is that you need upfront investment for that, maybe 50% larger than what we're investing in energy today, perhaps 100% larger. I personally believe that these studies show that this is also doable. It is doable. Just to give you an example, we give that difference that we need in the additional investment for energy subsidies today. And by and large, those subsidies are inhibiting the transformational change we are talking about. So it's actually a question of doing things differently that is really important, and that's why I think this this initiative is essential. Let me just make another comment that 2 weeks ago was Clean Energy Ministerial in London that I know some of you have attended. One of the objectives was to have specific commitments and action agendas for Rio+20 in this direction of fulfilling those 3 goals. Of course, not globally, action has to be local. So the idea is to involve private business partners in this, and also about 50 developing countries to develop their own action agenda for Rio+20. And I think that would be a good start if we can go that way, bottom up, fulfilling the 3 global objectives. So let me just in conclusion say that I'm exceedingly enthusiastic about this initiative. I think it offers really a unique pathway toward a sustainable future. And perhaps what's most important, maybe it'll let us break out of our lock-in into the current fossil-intensive development path. Thank you.